Hey everybody, welcome to the Fire It Up with CJ show. Today we're going to be talking about tuning the human biofield and this book by Eileen Day McKusick. So welcome.
Thanks for having me.
You know, I've just done a deep dive into sound therapy. I know about chanting. I've interviewed someone on singing bowls, but never anyone on these tuning forks. So I wanted to start off by just talking about all the different sound modalities and how forks fit in.
Sure. Well, it's really neat because I've been in this field for over 20 years now.
Mm-hmm.
And back in 1996, when I first started using the tuning forks, nobody had heard of sound healing at all.
Mm-hmm.
And, now it's 2017, and so many people have heard of sound healing. There's been a huge growth in crystal bowls and singing bowls and incorporating those into yoga classes. Gongs have really been proliferating.
Yeah.
And tuning forks as well, and there are also technologies like binaural beats that people listen to in their ears. So there's kind of a broad spectrum of technologies and acoustic instruments. And I think one of the reasons why sound is becoming so popular is because it works. It really does create a state change for people.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what people are looking for. The world's really stressful, and people kind of need a way to get away from stress. And sound baths or music chanting. I actually went and did kirtan the other night, which is a form of chanting, and I felt so great afterwards.
Yeah, I've done Christian Das. What's his name?
Krishna Das.
Krishna Das was here, and I did chanting for the first time. And it's a weird thing. It definitely puts you in a different state. And I've also done shamanic drumming, which is a different form, and it's all somehow the beats that music makes put you in an altered state and changes your brain waves to theta brain, brain waves, which is that kind of you're getting into the unconscious state. So is it all working on the same, and the chanting, hearing, the Om, which you always do in yoga, or a lot of people do in yoga, and I was just introduced to, there's all the different sounds of the chakra, like Lam, Ram, Vam, whatever, and saying those open the chakra. So I've been just playing around with that. So this is perfect. And before this interview, so I've been playing around with it, and there is something that happens about having that vibration in your inside of your body. So that seems like there's some, like the chanting and the oming that are vibration inside of your body, and then there are things like I'm putting this because I listen to tapes with shamanic drumming. Mm-hmm. So is it working on all the same principle of, and you have your tuning forks, of course. How are they working on the same idea and principle?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, to me, what coherent sound does is a few things. It produces nitric oxide in the body, and nitric oxide is a vasodilator and a muscle relaxant. So that's one of the things that's happening sort of on a chemistry level in our bodies. But, we're also sort of vibrational fields, right? We're just sort of packets of vibration. And so when people are under stress, their vibrations are like,
right.
And then you bring in a nice coherent sound wave, and it's resonance and entrainment is that basically sound will resonate, especially acoustic sound, and that's the principles of the tuning forks, that they'll initially resonate with whatever vibe the body is giving off. But then they will entrain the body into a more coherent expression, which usually involves relaxation of some kind.
Right.
So,
in yoga, they always say, I studied yoga teaching for a while, and they say that the calmest person in the class, everyone will attune to that particular person. And so what I think I just heard you said is that the sound of the tuning fork or the Om or whatever that sound is, that vibration, other people will, your body will attune to that sound. Regardless of where your body is, it will attune to whatever is the calmest sound, highest vibration. What is it attuning to, do you think?
The strongest vibration is what we'll entrain to. So, if you go to a lecture and that lecturer is really stressed, I had this happen with a very famous speaker where he was clearly very stressed and running on adrenaline. And by the end of his talk, I felt stressed and I could feel my adrenals fluttering in my body. So, the person up there with the microphone is giving off this vibration
Mm.
will entrain us into that. So for better or for worse, we tend to get entrained to whatever the strongest vibration is that we're exposed to.
Right. So it can even be it's not necessarily the positive, but
Yeah.
I've always thought that the highest vibration wins the day. But that doesn't necessarily, well, this guy's on the mic, right? So that's probably a
Yeah.
little bit different.
Yeah. And, here's the thing. In biofield tuning, we try to avoid talking about higher vibrations as better.
Hmm.
In the New Age community, there's a lot of talk around raising your vibration or ascending. And yet, for a lot of people who've had trauma, the tendency to disassociate is one of kind of like leaving your body.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we talk about ascending or going to higher vibrations, it's often a withdrawal from the here and now, from being empowered and clear and coherent and grounded right now.
Yeah.
Instead of some kind of like higher aspiration-y thing.
Well, in your book, Tuning the Human Biofield, there's a part that you talk about purple washing, which I was just laughing. I mean, I shouldn't laugh, but I think it's something that I myself am guilty of, right? If you go through enough spiritual practices and you hear enough spiritual, which I do, right? A lot of those kind of messages. After a while, it's like, oh, it's not permissible. You kind of fast forward through angry, sad, jealous, guilty, all those kinds of emotions. And
exactly.
Yeah.
And the purple washing, I spoke of that. Like, I was so guilty. I was a total purple washer.
Right.
Like, oh, I never get angry, but I have this uncontrollable sugar addiction.
Right. Right, it has to you compensate someplace, right? If you're in a state of denial, it's going to come out elsewhere.
It's going to come out. There's a saying that emotions express themselves. So whether you're real, about, okay, I'm having anger at this situation, it's an appropriate response, and I need to figure out a way to manage this anger. Maybe I'll finally clean out all my kitchen cupboards vigorously.
Right.
So that's and be real about it, and instead of trying to suppress it. I think a lot of what happens in the spiritual community is this kind of like aspiration towards emotional perfectionism that leads to the suppression of emotions and the judgment of them.
Right.
So in my work, we don't judge anything. We say there's no such thing as a negative emotion. All emotions are welcome. They're appropriate. It's the suppression of emotions that actually creates trouble in the body.
Right. It's a judgment of those emotions as negative that actually is harmful. It's so funny because this morning I woke up, and I don't know why I did this, but I was reading a passage from the Tao Te Ching, and the passage was all about that, how there is we imported the dandelion, which is this beautiful yellow flower, to the United States, and we thought this is gorgeous flower, which now we consider a weed, right? And really why is it now a weed? It used to be the beautiful flower that we imported here, but it's because we've judged it. We've named it as bad. And it's exactly this purple washing idea where it's, it's your own judgments that are causing trouble. If you just accept that poison ivy, dandelions, all those things actually have an important purpose in your life, just like negative emotions, then and that's what I think is so interesting about your work, because you work with those kinds of. So I want to go back into a general question, but then tuning into the type of work that you do. So sound healing can be done for everything. Like when I went and bought one of these tuning forks I was playing around with yesterday, and I went in and to the store, and the gal said, "Oh yeah, after my acupuncture session, or I had physical therapy for 2 years and it did not work, or it wasn't doing what I was hoping it was going to do." And then it wasn't until I started using sound healing that this chronic back problem that I'd had for a really long time went away. So I know that they're kind of physical things. I assume like all the types of things that you see, a massage therapist, PT, acupuncturist, like those are things that can be covered by the tuning fork. Is that right? What are the things that can be healed?
Well, we actually treat things on every level, because every aspect of your being is sonic, is sound, is vibration. So it works on physical things, mental things, emotional things. I'm doing a lot of work with ancestral vibrational information that we inherit, which I call energenetics, like the tone of the song of our DNA. Like babies don't come in as clean slates. They come in preloaded with vibrational information. And if mom was depressed and has that vibration in her tonal sequencing, it's very likely that you just inherit it. You become born with that tonal sequencing.
That's fascinating.
Yeah, because we often think about inheriting diseases or, eye color or hair color. We don't think about inheriting emotional proclivities, and yet we really do. And, again, coming back to kind of the standard New Age approach of change your thinking, change your life, it's very hard to change these vibrational patterns that are so deep in your subconscious that the root actually is preconception. And so, people try to get at these feelings in their bodies from the level of me and mine without realizing that this is inherited. This is something you came in with, and the roots go deep. And people often feel like, I've done all this therapy and I've done all this work, and I still can't get rid of these feelings. I must be a failure somehow. And then a lot of guilt and judgment comes in on top of that.
Right. Where it could be something that you inherited from, or even a past life, like, or maybe it's just I don't know, because I talked to someone a long time ago that believed that someone has like a seed sound, or I can't remember exactly the word that they used in their modality, but it's at the time of birth, there's a sound that is like your sound, and there's a sound that your body naturally snaps to, and that will bring you to your essence or something like that. Have you ever heard of that? Is that the...
That's what I call our factory settings.
Okay. So different than seed sound. Okay, our factory settings. I think they call it prakriti in Hinduism, or in yoga, but factory settings is another. It's our Americanized version. So we come in with our factory settings of sounds, and then those layered on top of those are our parental sounds that go in, and it's interesting. Yeah. I never thought of that way, but because, they talk about the unconscious, and that by the age 12, that your body is you're fully baked. Your unconscious mind is fully programmed at that time. And almost everything that you do beyond that age 12 is kind of snapping back to that pattern that's been laid there. So it takes so much time and effort, because it's like cement. It's like crazy glued in to your into your conscious and way of being. So I assume that's the same as sound, right? Unless you go in there.
Absolutely. And start having it.
Yeah. Okay, so how does this inner what did you call it? Intergenerational what did you call it?
Energenetics.
Energenetics. Okay, so whether it's energenetics or there are all sorts of things in our field, which I never thought about, and I loved your description that it's like a tree with lots of different layers. Can you explain, and it has something to do with the ones closest to you or the ones that are closest to your age and all the way out? Can you explain what this gigantic field is? It was the first time I've ever heard of something like that.
It was a discovery that I made just, playing with tuning forks. I did this as a hobby for about 10 years. It was weird. I started it in Connecticut in the 90s. And if I told people that I was doing sound healing on your chakras with tuning forks, you can imagine how people replied to that.
Exactly. Especially in Connecticut.
Yeah. You couldn't be, it was like uber woo, nothing could be more woo than that. And I'm actually very, very left brain. I'm very logical and practical and always looking for what makes sense. And so, to have people make this snap judgment about me that I was some kind of fruitcake was a little frustrating.
Yeah.
So I never really wanted to do it as a vocation, mostly because of the image thing. So, for 10 years, I just kind of did 1 or 2 a week, sort of as a hobby. It was curious. It was interesting. But I was in the restaurant business, and then I owned a specialty food business. So that was my sort of primary thing. But then in 2006, I started making this discoveries about energy patterns kind of off the body and started exploring out there. And so basically, I activate my tuning fork, start about 6 feet away from somebody's body, and then just slowly move in towards their body with the vibrating tuning fork. And it would change like a needle going across an album, it would like broadcast all these different sounds. That is what would happen. And the
So you
tone
could
would just
literally hear a different sound coming out of the tuning fork.
exactly. I mean, it wasn't like I have super, super sensitive hearing and perception and like I'm perceiving these unbelievably subtle things. It's not like that at all. Like when I teach students, they're always so amazed at how distinct the sounds are and how you feel it in your hand. Like when you hit a pocket of turbulence that is related to some kind of traumatic memory, sometimes the fork will shriek. I mean, and even in a room, people, like it's so obvious.
Right.
And you can really feel it in your fingertips. And sometimes if you're even looking at the fork, you can see it start to shake more.
Wow. Interesting.
So what I discovered was I had this weird ability to get into these perturbations or turbulence, and it would just come to me what it was. So, the age would come to me, the sort of emotional tonality that was present. And I would say to my client, this feels like something really sad at around age 14. What happened then? They'd be like, oh, that was when my grandmother died. We were really close, blah, blah, blah. So, going through this process of finding these areas, describing them to clients verifying them, what happened was this pattern started to emerge. It really surprised me because, like you, I've availed myself to a lot of information, right? And in all of the reading that I had done about energy fields and chakras and blah, 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 there was nothing that correlated what I was discovering, which was this. It seemed to me like the biofield, and this is what I call my biofield anatomy hypothesis, was our mind, conscious and subconscious mind. It was where our memories were stored, and our memories were stored in like these standing waves in this very specific format. So every time somebody would feel sad, they would produce a very specific waveform, and the waveform would be recorded in this very specific area, the left side of the heart. So I started discovering like all the sad memories were in here, and all of the, worrying about the future was over here, and all of the speaking and not being heard was here, and saying yes when we meant no was here. All these sort of different states of mind or emotions or tendencies. And that in addition to this sort of like stratified level or layer of vibrational pattern, there was also this timeline aspect in that as people generated information, it moved away from them. So information close to the body was current or recent. Information I found at the very outer edge of the field, which was about 5 or 6 feet away, related to gestation, to birth, to earliest childhood. And then everything else fell very equidistantly, like rings in a tree. So if somebody was 60 and they had a lot of turbulence in their life at 30, halfway from the edge of their field to their body, directly halfway, I would find a pocket of turbulence.
And would you find it, let's say when you got to the age 30 ring, would you feel it, and I think I saw this in the video, you'd feel it all around. It wouldn't just be, let's say it was in my right, it was my not expressing my voice on the, right side, right? So I guess this side. So if I was in that area, would you find it, so you'd hear so you'd go with 6 feet around, you'd like bring the tuning, I'm going to pretend, you're bringing the tuning fork, you hear a key, like whatever noise, and then when you feel it, is it like you talk about feathering, and I saw this video where you're kind of like moving this way. Is that what the feathering is? So
yeah, here I've got a fork right here. So when we come in towards the body, right? So we're coming in towards the body.
Right.
Once we make connection with the magnetic field, we don't want to pull away because you've actually connected with the person's field. And when you do this, if someone is sensitive, they can really feel it. That's called feathering, and we don't want you to feather.
Okay. Okay, don't do this kind of thing. But then what are you doing when you're getting close? So you're here, you're moving in, you hear a noise, and then is it like usually localized in the spot, and then you put you put the sound in that spot and you vibrate that energy there, and then does it go like? Is it like a 30, like let's say this happened at age 30, mine would probably be out further here, but let's say it happened at age 30. Is it usually, do you find it around the whole ring?
Yeah, like if it depends on the severity of the trauma.
Mm-hmm.
Like if somebody had a really big car accident and got, pretty badly injured in it, we're going to find that in their whole system.
Mm,
But if somebody just had stress with their mom at age 14, we might not find that everywhere. We might just find it in the mom zone.
mm-hmm.
So it depends on the severity, the degree, the duration of stressors and events, about, whether they kind of show up everywhere or just in a localized kind of way.
Right. Yeah. I just want to help listeners. So in tuning the human biofield, you have not only certain things like you were talking about, whether the location of where you heard that sound means something, whether it's in your throat or your heart or your third eye or your first, second, whatever chakra. But then there are also zones, which is the mother and father zone, which you talked about. Can you tell folks what that is?
Yeah, so I made a really interesting discovery that we actually have fixed points in our solar plexus, about 10 inches to the left of your solar plexus.
Mm-hmm.
There's a spot kind of about the size of a hockey puck uh, that holds the energy of your mother. And if I stick a fork in that zone, I can tell you your mother's personality, and I can tell you about the quality of the relationship between the two of you, based on the space between that 10 inches and your body. And then on the right side, there's your
wait a second. That was a little fast forward. Okay, okay, so let's say, so I have a solar plexus. It's 10 inches away. You'll be
Yep.
putting in a tuning fork, and
Yep.
you'll say like, your mom tortured you during your teens. Like, what can you tell from that?
I don't know. It's weird. It's like it's a whole language, The
Yeah.
tuning forks produce like technically an infinite number of overtones and undertones, and
Mm.
everything that is in our system is just a pattern. We put labels on it and call things words, but really it's all electromagnetic patterns. And so, people's personalities, their energetic profile is all just a pattern. And when you stick a fork in a zone that holds information, all of that, it's like a barcode, and my brain's like a barcode scanner. Like, I just get it.
You're like an interpreter of the song. It's like, oh, wait, let me listen. Okay, awful mother, awful childhood. Okay, got it.
Got it. Yeah.
All right, so on one side is the mother and the other side is the father. And in addition to that, there's all sorts of information with respect to the emotional content, depending on the zone that there's in. And now this, I'm sorry, intergenetic.
Energetic.
Energetic. Okay, so what is it? Where is that? In that, like, is that in the outer ring, since it's
Yeah, it's the very outer edge, the very sort of the membrane of your field. So I don't know if your listeners are familiar with Bruce Lipton. He talks about the intelligence of the membrane of the cell,
Mm-hmm.
and how much information that holds, and how it's so responsible for the interaction with the environment. And I also find that like the outer membrane of our magnetic field is just imbued with information, about the time and the place that we were born, and all of these factors that led into the creation of who we are. We're very much more like outside pushing in creates us. We're very reactive to inputs. I think, again, New Age thinking is kind of like, I create my life, but really your life creates you in a lot of ways. And in more than we realize. We're very informed by place and culture and family and ancestors' experiences. There's been a lot of research done with children of Holocaust survivors and how they have anxiety and depression and all of these things because, of the suffering of their ancestors. Mm-hmm. And so I can often pick up on a lot of those inputs at the very outer edge of the field. And spend a lot of time there. And basically what the sound does when the body is introduced to its own noise, it's like a reflection. So, when I hold the tuning fork in a turbulent area, that's reflecting to the body its own signal. It's kind of like a mirror and realizing you've spinach in your teeth and being like, oh, that's not good, right? I better correct that.
I see. So it gives you, it's the feedback that you're like, oh, there's something going on because your vibration is hitting this thing, going, or whatever the sound is. So you're like, oh, okay, there's something that I'm emitting that doesn't literally sound good.
Exactly. It doesn't sound good. And the body will spontaneously correct it. It will auto-tune itself in pretty short order. It'll just become self-aware of its own noise, and it will use the coherent rhythmic input to, fix itself, which might, because I wrote a blog post recently that said that Biofield tuning is not a spiritual practice, and I am not a spiritual teacher. This is really, it's body work. It's really about getting the body to relax. This is not about achieving any kind of spiritual awakening or emotional perfectionism or anything like that. It's about helping the body to release noise that it's been holding so that it can be more resilient to new stressors. 'Cause life is stressful. We're always going to be encountering stressors. We might get angry and get sad or whatever. That doesn't matter. But can we bounce back from that? Can we just be springy and resilient to life stressors? And that's really what this work does. It helps to just get the noise out of the signal.
So I want to talk
with people who have PTSD, for example. They just have so much noise, so much undigested noise in their system that they just can't handle more inputs. But when you take the noise out of the signal, then you can manage stress again.
No, I saw a video with you where you were working with someone's energy, and you found like a spot, and you were kind of moving over them towards the midline. You kept on talking about a midline. Can you tell us about what those lines are and how that works when you're doing tuning?
Yeah. Well, we work, I got kind of indoctrinated into the chakra system with my very first set of forks, which were the notes C, D, E, F, G, A, B, and they said you C over the root, D over the second, E over the third. And I just got kind of started working in the chakras. Every place where there's allegedly a chakra, there's also a nerve plexus. There's a cluster of nerve endings there. So there's definitely more kind of sonic and electromagnetic energy in those places anyway. So the idea that the chakras are along the midline of the body, or that these nerve plexuses are along the midline of the body. And the principle is that in these areas of turbulence, there's also trapped energy.
Right.
What that energy is, nobody really knows. I call it energy. Is it electromagnetic energy? Is it photons? Is it free electrons? It's hard to find scientists to talk about this with, and anybody who's really got a clue, It feels like charge and resistance and or light. And when you get the chaos to settle down, the energy that's been frozen in that chaos sort of decouples, it releases. And so we sweep it or bring it into the chakra where it appears to be absorbed into the body. And the outcome of that is that, when people have these traumas, from a shamanic perspective, you were talking about shamanic drumming, there's a belief that when people have traumas, a bit of their soul breaks off and stays there, right? And in a soul retrieval, a shaman will journey, through drumming in their mind and go find that piece of soul, and they'll bring it back and actually place or blow it back into the body. Yeah. And so when I first started finding this stuff in the field and realizing that it was wow, this is a soul fragment. This is a part of you that kind of got stuck back here because you couldn't integrate or digest the experience. So there you are, kind of frozen in time and space. And so the sound finds these areas, it liberates these areas, and it brings those soul fragments back into circulation.
Yeah. Okay. So now I get there's a part in your book where you said people sweep it, and I've seen people do energy work where they're going and they're sweeping it down or sweeping it out or sweeping it into the ground.
Get rid of that.
Get rid of my soul parts.
Well, okay. So that's the difference with this work, is that we don't judge those things as bad to get rid of. We see them as aspect of self that's kind of stuck, not knowing what to do. And so we just come along and get under it and give it a little nudge and get it back into circulation. There's nothing wrong or bad with any of these things. And we can't get rid of ourselves anyway, or any of our experiences, but we can digest them.
Right. So it's putting that back into the center. When you find something out, bringing it back to center and having it digested.
And what's so cool about this is that people always say, first and foremost, they feel lighter, because this is all heavy. This is our baggage, our pain body. It's all heavy. But when it goes back into circulation, it becomes light. But then people's energy gets freed up. I hear all the time, like, I went home and I busted that pile of clutter that I've never been able to deal with, or I finished this creative project, or I actually started writing a book, or, so this is all potential. It's all electric potential, but it's also like soul or personality potential, so that when it comes back into us, it's suddenly liberated to do what it wants to do. Which is
so what happens after an energy session with you? So like if I get a massage, like I just had a massage yesterday, and I almost fell when I get out of my bed because I was in so much pain and my whole body got reintegrated at night. Do you have the same, like what are the things that people expect? You talked about the lightness initially, right after you get a session.
Well, there's a couple different directions that people can go. So one is, I feel light, I feel clear, I feel great, I feel energized. The other direction is, I feel like I just got run over by a bus.
Right.
And, people can go into a detox response.
Right.
Because any place where there's stagnation in the field, there's stagnation in the body. And so if people have a lot of stagnation, a lot of frozen energy, they have a lot of just debris in their cells. That part of their system just isn't working great. And so when you bring flow back into that part of the field and those cells, it can create a detox response. So sometimes people will report flu-like symptoms, getting rid of mucus, being really emotional, like having waves of emotion come out, headaches, things like that. It usually only lasts a day or two. So in some cases it can last longer.
Mm-hmm.
But that only usually happens in the first session or two. And then after that, people just start feeling better and better. They kind of make connections. And, the thing that most people say is just, I feel lighter. I feel lighter. And I know for myself, having received hundreds of sessions at this point, that I pretty much feel like a ball of light just floating around because I'm so well groomed in my field.
Right.
So.
Right. That's interesting. Okay. So, God, I had a question and I just lost it. Oh, I know. So a friend of mine said, well, what should I be looking for in a sound? Do you have a reference? And we talked about this yesterday. There are all sorts of people who do sound healing. There are people who I saw and I was looking at YouTube, people like gonging underneath the table, Tibetan bowls, crystals. I saw all sorts of stuff on the web.
Yeah.
What should I be looking for in a practitioner? I mean, what are the questions that I ask? Because it's one of those things, it's not like I guess we can get referrals, but I've noticed that even when I do referrals for energy work, everyone has a different energy. So my friend Kelly, who recommends people, she likes really gentle stuff. And then I go in there, I'm like, okay, it kind of work, and I like stuff that's more, I don't know why, I just need to have someone bang me over the head where I'm like, okay, feel it.
Strong coffee and,
Yeah.
I want to feel something. Right?
Right.
When you go for something, you want to feel something.
Right.
That's one of the things that's so great about this particular practice is like people really feel things. It creates a very profound state change that's often, it's immediately, like people really feel, like even in classes, when I teach classes and I'm working with someone who's never had their hands on the forks before at all, can induce a state change in a fellow student, with their very first turn because we're creating real change in the body.
Right. Right.
It's hard for me to answer that question. I've only received sound healing a couple times. I've done sessions where people bang bowls around me and gongs on either end, and it's kind of boring. And then when I'm done, I don't really feel any different. And I don't take away from people who do that,
right?
Because I'm sure there are some people who are really good at it. But it really didn't do much for me,
Right.
Right. So I don't know. I don't feel like I'm qualified because I don't really know anything other than the work that I do and that I teach. And how to sort out from people out there who's, I can't.
How about I'm going to ask a slightly different question, which is, how about questions that when people ask you, you're like, I'm so glad that they asked that, because these are the kind of questions they should be asking. What are the kind of questions you want to ask your practitioner, or that have been asked you? I'm like, that actually, I think was helpful for me to explain.
Right. Well, for like experience, for one thing, right? I mean, I've been doing sound healing for 20 years. So when you've done a lot of sessions, you've seen a lot of outcomes. So I guess I would look for somebody who had experience, who's
Mm-hmm.
been doing it for a while.
Mm-hmm.
Because you can go to a few workshops and, become a certified bowl healer and, hang out a shingle and, but not really know what you're doing, not,
Right.
so you learn a formula of how to bong bowls around people. But, yeah, I mean, I think the energy of the practitioner also makes a difference because our level of coherence or incoherence informs how we entrain people. So does that person look healthy? Do they seem healthy? Do you get a good vibe off of them? Do they look like they've worked through their heavy energies?
Right. Oh, and I think it's funny because now that you said that, I think that is one of the criteria for me, which is someone's energy. Like when I meet them, does their energy resonate with mine? Because if it doesn't, and I was laughing when you were talking about after a session, and it's not funny, but I was laughing because you're saying sometimes people have a session and they feel like kind of like discombobulated. That almost happens like with the vast majority. Sometimes with my coaching sessions, they feel light, but oftentimes they feel just like a truck hit them. So that happens in all different ways. But if you're not open to having a truck hit you, you better not coach with me because I'm going to like go in there and like, dive into your stuff. But I think that's the same thing.
I mean, it means that things have been shaken up and that they're moving around and that they're discharging and, and that's good. People want change and sometimes change is, a little tough, but that's okay.
Yeah, no, I view it as a good thing, but now I have a way of describing. Like I went in there, we shook some stuff around and it's stuff that's been stuck for a really long time. But I think the point though is you can feel the energy of someone, if someone comes, like the people that frankly don't work for me, or they come out and they're like, hey, how are you? And they're really soft. And then I just like, I don't know, part of me is like, what? I don't think that work works because there's a part of me that doesn't have rapport with it energetically. So almost to me, it seems like making sure it's like an energetic match would probably be nice.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, exactly. This work is very incisive. Like it just gets right into whatever is going on. The forks just reveal, whatever in the field is turbulent and wants to be worked on.
Right.
So just kind of gets right into it. There's no dancing around the subject.
Right.
So, I wanted to answer your question too about how people feel. Because I didn't talk about how it gets rid of pain. Not all pain. If you've got a pinched nerve, it's not going to get rid of that. But if you have like some, deep old tension related or psychosomatic pain, it can just knock that out immediately. Anxiety, we've helped people get rid of anxiety in just a few sessions. Depression, we've knocked that out of people, mild to moderate, not severe long term. But those are all they're just vibrational patterns. That's all they are. And when you find where they are exactly in the field, you can help the body to resolve that pattern. And then it's not a pattern anymore.
Interesting. Okay. So I want to talk a little bit about, now I went out and bought a tuning fork. This thing cost me $60 and now I realize I bought the wrong tuning fork.
That cost you $60?
Yes.
Okay. Here's a real fork.
Well, why are you telling this isn't real?
This one's $60 and it's way better. So I have mine made with the tines spread apart so that when you activate them, they vibrate for a really long time.
Right.
And my forks are they're made towards the Schumann resonance. If you're familiar with that, how there's an Earth's heartbeat electromagnetic pulse within the ionospheric cavity. That's about 7.83 hertz on average, which is your brain in theta, sort of theta alpha cusp. And so this is 7.83 times 8, and I also have one that's 8.83 times 7. So if you listen to them together, like this, it creates a binaural beat of 7.83 hertz. But we also use them to like squeeze together trigger points. Like, if people are massage therapists, it's kind of hard to do it yourself, but you can like actually, a massage therapist can use these forks. You're working on somebody who's really tight and you're like, oh, I'm not getting anywhere with it. And you just activate the forks and then squeeze the trigger point and it will melt. It will like dissolve.
Wow.
Yeah. So those are really useful for, any kind of muscle constriction. You can also kind of use these in the field too. The one you have wouldn't work so well in the field.
What's wrong with this one? What should I be looking for instead of this one?
I mean, you can use that, one way that people can use them on themselves. I found the most effective if you put them on your face, because you have all these meridian endpoints on your face. So you can activate the fork and let the sound dry down all the way past 0. And then just kind of rest. And if you spend like 10 minutes, just kind of letting the sound run out on your face, it can be incredibly relaxing. In fact, I used to look like Clint Eastwood. I was always scowling. I had this huge furrow between my eyebrows, and I spent a whole bunch of time one week just like zapping the heck out of all of these muscles, which kind of paralyzed them, so that even when I went out in the sun, I couldn't squint. And I kind of broke the habit of scowling all the time.
My God, you don't need Botox. All you need is a little
sonic Botox.
Okay, that's hilarious. Okay, so is there so I was playing around with this yesterday, and I got into a light state. I would say that we had just gone to college basically my son got accepted to college. We went to go visit the college, and all sorts of emotional stuff has come up. Like I can feel it, but it's not, but I don't know if I've been purple washing it. It's so deep down in there, I can't even get at it. That's how bad it is in terms of sadness. But so I actually was playing around with this yesterday, and I did feel a sense of lightness, and I slept really, really well. The question I have, because I saw some things on the web, so does it matter that when I was listening to this stuff on the web, they were talking about like trying to get to a bone, because when you hit a bone, it vibrates. Is that the goal, or like, you were going to different parts in your skull, I assume, but I assume that these are acupressure points, something.
Yeah,
but
acupressure points or acupuncture points.
Okay.
I mean, it vibrates better on a bony surface than if you stick it on flesh. If I'm right here in my cheek, it's not quite as dramatic, but you do have some interesting points here. Like, and there's maps of these different points. The hairline is also really potent, and this point right here on your philtrum, is another really potent point. So you could definitely. I mean, I think most people who sit around putting tuning forks on themselves, after a while, it's just like the chanting thing. It's just like, oh, okay, like whatever you're in just kind of settles down.
Right, that's what happened to me last night when I was playing around with this. But is there too much of a good thing? Like, could I vibrate myself into insanity? Like, is there like, can I do? And when I hit the point, will you have a felt sense of when you're done, or do you is it like try like in EFT, which is a tapping thing? They talked about tapping these points, and they have a certain number of taps. Some of the methodology has a certain number of taps. Some of it you just do when you feel that it's done. Is there a methodology for how often, how many, where the points are?
You wouldn't want to do any single point more than 3 times, or your body kind of gets bored with it.
Okay. Right.
So, yeah, and I think you just kind of get a felt sense of when you're done.
Right. Okay. So what am I looking for? So in a tuning fork, there's 2 different. This is a weighted one, which I understand is for putting this little point here on your body. And then I saw some guy had like a crystal, which then he was like pointing. This is a pointy end of a crystal here, and then like putting it here.
Yeah, we do that too. Well, what the crystal does is like a quartz crystal, quartz, amethyst, or citrine all have the property of when you apply a current to one end, it comes out the other end in an amplified pulse. And so that amplified pulse is really useful because when I actually got rid of my furrow, I was actually using a crystal in the middle because it sends in like an electrical amplified pulse that really like relaxes the muscles pretty acutely. So the crystal actually kind of adds more bang for your buck to the equation. And it's not,
and you're trying to get a point on the, like, so here's a point. So I'm putting the point, and then I'm putting, like, this is where your people in Connecticut are like, seriously?
Totally.
I was watching.
I think I felt when I'm like, oh my God, not only do I use tuning forks, but I use crystals too. Like, what the heck? The book is all like science. Like, this is the science of why this works. So it doesn't seem so fruity.
I know.
property of a crystal. It's like, that's why they're used in watches and clocks, because you apply current, it comes out the other end in a pulse. It's just what they
There
do.
is science behind it. It's just funny because I started watching these videos. I saw like 4 of them. And then there's a guy who's doing a meditation, and he was like going like this, and he's like listening like this. I'm like, okay, I'm done. Like I'm really open-minded, but I've hit my limit. I'm just laughing my head off.
That's what's hard about being in this field, you know. There's a lot of people who mean really well, but there's a lot of fruitcake bomb and gone out there, and
just watch YouTube. You will see them all. I mean, I was open, and literally each person was more a little bit out there than the other. And then when I saw the guy doing this like crystal music, I don't know what he was doing, meditation, I just thought, all right, I'm out. That's where I draw the line. Okay, so there's different megahertz. So in mine, it said, I bought this piece of crap.
it's fine. This is not because mine are the best. That's fine.
Is it a certain brand, or can I buy them on your website? What do you mean yours?
Okay, good.
Okay, got it.
Because I wore out ordinary forks. Most forks are used to be like used over the body.
Right.
And what was happening with mine, because I was hunting down turbulence and noise, was that the forks were getting like all, resonating with the noise that was present, and it was creating micro cracks in the metal, and they would develop a buzz and like wear out.
Wow.
I can't tell you how many dozens of worn out tuning forks I have kicking around in various drawers, but the manufacturer of the forks that I was using decided to work with me to create a superior alloy. And so these forks that I have made are they're precision crafted in the USA from a very high quality alloy that's been through a lot of R&D. They ring brighter, clearer, longer, stronger, a lot more so than other forks. So sometimes people are like, oh, I want to get into tuning forks. I'm going to buy something cheap. I'm going to buy this tuning fork from India with this stupid little activator, and it makes a kind of dink sound, and it's just not, anybody who knows tools, you get what you pay for with tools.
Right.
If you buy cheap tools, you're going to just get a bad experience with them.
Okay, so I should be looking at, because and then when I went to the store, there's like a whole array of like different sounds and
different kinds.
So in your what do you recommend if we go to your website? Which ones should I get? Is there like a basic starter set?
Yeah,
and if
so, starter set. There's 2 weighted forks and then 2 unweighted forks that are like our kit, and that's all you need. You don't need, I've done sessions in the past where I used 30 different forks at one time, and then I started breaking them all left and right. And then I'd be down a whole bunch, and then I discovered that I didn't need them all. That what you just really need is a coherent input in these areas of incoherence. You don't need 30 different frequencies. You just need the body to hear itself, and it'll fix itself pretty much regardless of the frequency. But the better the tool, the higher the quality of the sound, the feedback.
Okay, got it. So the difference between the weighted and the unweighted. So this is weighted. It has these little barrels on it. You have unweighted. Are those the ones that make the sound? Because this I don't think would make a sound.
Yeah, these make sound. So.
Okay, got it. So that's how you know when you're scanning the field whether it actually makes a noise or not.
Exactly.
Okay, I find all this stuff fascinating. We've only covered 3 of my questions, but that's okay because it's just this stuff is.
You have to have me back.
I will. I'd love to have you back because this is just so. I think it's incredibly fascinating. It's
incredibly fascinating.
And I think it's so simple, right? I mean, because you don't have to. I mean, it sounds like I'm not sure if everyone can go like at 12 years old you had a trauma with your whatever. I'm not sure if everyone can do that because it seems like you're kind of tuned in, but you can probably feel like a ring where there's stuck energy, and whether the person consciously knows it or not, what happened, just unsticking that stuff and moving to the center is going to do good work. Whether you are intuitive, all you have to do is feel and hear, right? It seems like you don't have to be like a healer. I was born to be a healer or whatever.
I call us technicians. We're like sound technicians. We're just bouncing sound off the body, listening to the signal that comes back and hanging out wherever we find noise in the signal. Then the body fixes itself. Then we just move on to the next spot where there's noise in the signal. We're not healing anybody. I don't want you to think of yourself as a healer. It's like, oh,
I'm just holding this thing.
just holding this thing. Exactly. You're the one that's doing the work. I'm just finding the noise. And I do that with my ordinary senses. With my fingers, I can feel the resistance and the change. Whenever you get into these areas of turbulence, you stop breathing. The practitioner does because often, when people go through trauma, what do? They hold their breath, right? So that information is encoded with a breath hold and a freeze.
Wow. That's
So that's one thing to pay attention to. People get caught up in the sound. They're like, oh, I don't know if I hear it. But really what I've found is that first, notice your breath. Second, notice whatever you might be feeling in your fingertips. Did it get more vibraty there? Did the vibration change?
Mm-hmm.
And what are you feeling in your body? Because your own system is being flooded with that vibrational information. It might be anxiety. It might be sadness. So how do you feel in that spot?
Mm-hmm.
And then the sound kind of comes after that.
Right. So it's a five sensory kind of perception. It's not just like, you're not like putting all the weight on this. It's kind of, this is almost a facilitator for stuff that happens. All right. If people want to buy a good one of these, that doesn't break or warp or crack, how do they tell us your website where they can go to get tuning?
So the website is biofieldtuning.com. So Biofield is all one word. Biofield tuning. There you go. They're both on there. .com.
Okay, got it. And then we've been in your book. Says I'm Eileen Day McKusick.
And that's on Amazon too.
Yeah. Excellent. Thank you so much. I'd definitely like to have you on again, just because I want to know how, what I should be doing with this thing. I mean, I have it. I've been playing around. I now know I can do Botox. This makes me happy.
Don't forget the crystal.
Exactly. Yeah, no, I have deep ones too, so I'll have to have a crystal.
It really does help.
Thank you so much for being here.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Have a great day. Bye.
It means so much to me that you're listening to the show. I would love your support in any way by giving me comments below, or to subscribe to the show, or share the show with friends. Thank you again for your support. Love and blessings.